love for the game, Reed, in other words, from Pittsburgh, he hit me and said, what advice or feedback have you received going into college football's media space? I'm just getting started. I want to know your thoughts. Well, the first thing I'd ask, Reed, is do you love college football? This seems so simple, doesn't it? This seems like an afterthought. Of course, if you want to cover college football, you love college football. You'd be surprised, Reed. You'd be really surprised at how many people are out here covering sports, including college football for a living, who do not love college football. Now, it's the free market, so hey, if you can get a job doing it and you want it, you should be able to have it. But my advice would be if you don't love this stuff, I would pursue other avenues. If you do love it, then pursue it. But it's always kind of disappointing, when you look at someone, and you see them just like I do. There are people in the sports media world who seem to only come alive when there's a scandal, or, when a coach gets fired, or when there's an investigation. And it's like everything but the game on the field is what they're the most passionate about. I have a theory that's why a lot of these folks dove headfirst into the story about playoff expansion, because it had to do with storyline, drama, intrigue, combating conferences, but it had nothing to do with the play on the field. Same thing exists in the NBA. You got folks who get 10 times more excited talking about a trade than they do the games on the court. And it's because they don't really love the game. They love basically treating it like a Netflix series. They kind of love that, or treating it like politics, because a lot of these folks would rather be covering politics. It's just that when they were, headed down the interstate of media, the political off-ramp was closed, so they had to wait and get off on the next one. It just happened to be sports. So, love it. Make sure you love it if you're going to cover it. Next thing, don't even check your numbers for like 2 years. When I got here and we started the show, and me and Director Colin were doing this thing down in Brentwood, which is in Tennessee, and it was during the middle of COVID. I mean, we weren't even looking at the numbers because we were starting from scratch. And even if you're doing a great job, which we weren't necessarily doing, but even if you're doing a great job, even if you're doing the best show in the world, you don't take off overnight, which is a good thing. Because long term, that means that it takes being the cream to rise to the top. That's a net positive for the space. But in the short term, that means you're going to struggle and you're going to get 23 views, even though you think you just did the best segment of your life. And you may be right about it. You don't get validated by the numbers early on. That'll just depress you. Stack your show for your audience and not yourself. Hey, quick timeout. Check and see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, make sure you do. It's free. It doesn't obligate you or sign you up for anything. It just helps us keep the channel free. All right, back to the show. So, big mistake that a lot of people make is they put stuff in their show or they put stuff in their rundown that they want to talk about. But you're not your audience. The audience is the audience. So there are a lot of things that I love that we never talk about on the show. There's a lot of stuff I could do without that we do talk about on the show. Because over time, you guys have definitively told me what you do and you don't care about. So that's the show. These are all very simple concepts. It's just so many people screw them up that if you get the basics figured out, you can really succeed big time. I would say also, and this is a huge benefit, be your audience. I was at dinner last night with someone, and we were talking about the psychology of audience building and, looking for a cheat code or a shortcut. How do you relate to college football fans? Well, here's a secret. Grow up a college football fan. Hang out with normal people your whole life. Go to lunch with your buddies every day who are also working 9-to-5 jobs in West Central Georgia and eat barbecue and talk about college football. It's what normal people who grew up where I'm from do. That is our audience for this show. So I am the audience. So it's not very hard to relate to people when you are those people. Now, if you parasail in from the Northeast and you went to one of the classic journalism schools and you kind of have to tighten the bow tie a little bit, make sure the sweater vest is properly aligned before you go on air, you may struggle relating with these folks. But these are my folks. I am these folks. So there's no struggle. So Reed, I would ask you, before you define the audience that you want to have, are you that audience? And then if you are, the final question is the toughest one. Why would anyone care what you have to say? I always pause when I ask that one. Because when someone asks me that for the first time, it like slapped me in the face. Because that's really what it comes down to. Does anyone care what you have to say? If you walk up to someone and say 2 plus 2 is 4, but they don't care, it doesn't really matter that 2 plus 2 is 4. If you tell them Mississippi State's going to beat Georgia Saturday, but they don't really care why you think that, it doesn't matter if Mississippi State wins. You got to be able to do the hardest thing in the world, which is make the most stubborn group of people in the world, sports fans, I'm one of them, be willing to shut up and listen to what you have to say. They defer their attention to you. If you've ever hung around normal college football fans, like most of us grew up with and grew up being, you know how hard it is thinking you know everything, thinking we all know everything, to have a guy walk in a room and you say, oh man, I'm going to be quiet and see what he has to say about this. Hardly anyone in your social circle demands that kind of authority from you. So, or commands that kind of authority from you. I'm the same way. So like, you got to become that. And it takes a while. It takes a while, and it's fun. If you love it, it's fun, but it takes a while. So that's some quick advice.